right, strap in, everyone. We're going deep into the crypto world this week. Specifically, that crazy first week after Trump got back into the Oval Office. You guys wanted to know how Bitcoin and the whole market reacted, right? So we've been digging through a ton of articles, like seriously, a ton. Regulatory changes, market reactions, even some wild new product filings.
You know, the thing that really jumps out is how Bitcoin actually hit a record high before the inauguration.
Yeah, the anticipation was crazy, right?
It was. Like, the market was holding its breath, and then boom, Bitcoin goes through the roof. Obviously, people had high hopes for Trump, especially after, well, years of uncertainty with the last administration.
Totally. So let's break it down. For investors like our listeners, what were the three biggest, game-changing moments?
Okay, well, first you've got this flurry of executive orders. One was all about digital assets, which sounded promising.
Okay, yeah, that's a step in the right direction, right?
Right, and this order was all about setting up a working group to examine regulations and then, make some recommendations.
Gotcha. So was this related to that whole thing Trump talked about during his campaign, the strategic Bitcoin stockpile? I mean, that got everyone buzzing.
It did, and that's where things get, kind of fuzzy. This executive order uses digital assets, but that doesn't automatically mean Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm. So it could be Bitcoin.
Sure, but it could also be other cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
Or even a central bank digital currency. Who knows, right?
Okay, I see. Classic political move. Promise something exciting, then deliver something vague. So what did the market think of this order?
Well, prediction markets, where people basically bet on what's going to happen.
Yeah, those are wild.
Well, the odds of a dedicated Bitcoin reserve actually dropped after the order. People weren't so sure Trump would actually do it.
Makes sense. The market wasn't buying it completely. Okay, so what about the SEC? They've always been a bit of a wild card, right?
Totally. And that brings us to the second big change. So, remember Gary Gensler, the SEC chair? He wasn't exactly Mr. Crypto-friendly.
Oh, yeah, I remember him.
Well, he stepped down before Trump even officially took office.
Interesting timing. He knew what was coming.
Right. But then came the real shocker. Trump replaced him with Paul Atkins, who's, known for being pro-crypto.
Uh-huh.
Just that news alone, Bitcoin goes above $100,000 for the first time ever.
Wow, that's a pretty clear signal. The market clearly loved Atkins. But why was he seen as such a good thing for crypto?
Well, he's always advocated for a more balanced approach to regulation, foster innovation, but also protect investors. And a lot of people in the crypto community really like that.
So it's not the SEC versus crypto anymore.
Exactly. More let's work together, right?
I like it.
Oh, and there's more. The SEC also created this new crypto task force.
No way!
Yeah, and guess who's leading it?
Okay, I have no idea.
Crypto mom, Hester Pierce.
Crypto mom? That's amazing.
Right. She's been pushing for clearer crypto regulations for years, from inside the SEC. So this task force, it's a real sign they're taking crypto seriously.
Okay, so we've got a pro-crypto executive order, a new SEC chair who seems to get it, and a whole task force dedicated to crypto. All in 1 week. That's huge. What was the third big change?
Well, this one was a direct result of the new, friendlier environment. It's someone opened the floodgates. Everyone wanted a piece of the crypto pie. Over 30 applications for new crypto ETFs landed on the SEC's desk that week.
Wait, 30? That's insane.
It is. And we're not just talking Bitcoin ETFs either. Litecoin, Solana, Ripple. There were even applications for a 2x leveraged meme coin ETF.
A leveraged meme coin ETF?
Mm-hmm.
Seriously, that sounds like a disaster waiting to happen, even with a more relaxed SEC.
I know, right? It's wild. And it kind of highlights a bigger point. A more supportive regulatory environment is generally good for crypto, right?
Sure.
But it also means the door's open for more complex, riskier stuff.
It's a double-edged sword. More options, but also more ways for things to go wrong.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered the executive order, the SEC shakeup, and this flood of new products.
Yeah.
But what about spot Bitcoin ETFs? Were there any filings for those?
Yes. In fact, there were filings for something even more interesting. In-kind redemptions on spot Bitcoin ETFs.
In-kind redemptions. Can you explain that? I'm not sure I get it.
Sure. It means you could potentially swap your ETF shares for actual Bitcoin.
Oh, wow. So instead of just tracking Bitcoin's price, you could actually hold the real thing.
Exactly. And that could make spot Bitcoin ETFs way more attractive to investors.
That's a big deal. Okay, so we've got a lot to unpack here. A pro-crypto executive order, a friendlier SEC, a wave of new product filings, and maybe even spot Bitcoin ETFs with in-kind redemptions. All in 1 week. It's a lot to process.
It really is a whirlwind.
All right, before we dive into what all this means for investors, let's take a quick.
It's a lot to take in, that's for sure. But let's focus on what these changes mean, for investors like our listeners. First off, clearer regulations, that's usually a good thing.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I mean, those early days of crypto, yeah, they were exciting, but pretty nerve-wracking too, especially for someone like me who's, not a crypto expert. Having some rules in place could make the whole market more stable.
Exactly. And that's what the SEC seems to be going for, leveling the playing field, giving businesses some guidance, but most importantly, protecting investors from, scams and all that.
Yeah, that makes sense. It felt like with the last administration, the SEC was almost like against crypto. Now it feels like they're actually trying to help it grow.
Right.
Responsibly, of course.
Right. And that shift in attitude, that could be huge for attracting institutional investors, the ones who've been hesitant because of all the uncertainty.
Right. So more institutional money flowing into crypto. Does that mean like higher prices?
That's the big question. It could mean more mainstream acceptance, more innovation, but it could also mean bubbles and, even more volatility.
It's like a good thing, but maybe a bad thing too.
Exactly. A double-edged sword, like you said before. Remember that whole meme coin thing a few years back? It could happen again, especially with some of these new products.
Yeah, those riskier ones for sure.
So it's more important than ever for investors to do their research, really understand the technology, the use cases. Don't just get caught up in the hype.
No more FOMO.
No more FOMO. It's about separating the signal from the noise, because a lot of projects, they're going to disappear.
Okay, so as an investor, I need to be informed, do my homework, and not get swept up in all the excitement. Got it. But what about that Bitcoin stockpile? Is that still on the table?
It's hard to say. The executive order, it was pretty vague. Remember, it said digital assets, not specifically Bitcoin.
Okay. So we just have to wait and see.
For now, yeah. But the fact that they're even talking about it, that shows how far crypto has come from being, this weird fringe thing to potentially part of a national strategy.
It's pretty incredible when you think about it. Speaking of strategy, what about stablecoins? Didn't the executive order mention promoting dollar-backed stablecoins globally?
That's another interesting point. It seems like the Trump administration sees stablecoins as a way to, keep the U.S. dollar strong in this new digital age.
I guess that makes sense. Stablecoins, they have the benefits of crypto, like fast transactions, low fees, but without, the crazy price swings of Bitcoin.
Right. They could be that bridge between the traditional financial world and the crypto world.
Yeah, I can see that. Making it easier for people to use crypto in everyday life.
Exactly. Especially for international transactions.
Okay, so let's recap. More regulatory clarity, maybe. A friendlier SEC. Tons of new product applications. Maybe even spot Bitcoin ETFs with in-kind redemptions. And a focus on stablecoins. All in just the first week of Trump's term.
I know, it's a lot.
It's crazy to think how different the crypto world might look in a few years.
Definitely. It's going to be a wild ride. And for investors, the most important thing is to stay informed, be careful, and make smart decisions based on, actual research, not just hype.
Solid advice. But we've talked about all the potential good stuff. Are there any downsides? Any risks or concerns that we haven't touched on yet?
That's a good question. It's important to look at both sides of the coin, right?
Right. So let's get critical here. What are some risks that investors should be aware of in this new crypto world?
Well, one concern is that all this excitement could lead to, loosening regulations too much, the ones that are meant to protect investors.
I see what you mean. Like if things swing too far in the other direction, we could end up with a market that's not regulated enough. And then, that opens the door for all sorts of bad stuff. Fraud, manipulation, you name it.
Exactly. And that could really hurt investors and ultimately harm the whole crypto market.
Yeah, it's a tricky balance. Encourage growth, but also protect people. What else should we be careful about?
Another risk is market bubbles. With all this hype, it's easy to get carried away and overestimate the value of, anything.
Like that leveraged meme coin ETF.
Exactly. Some speculation is normal, especially in a new market, but investors need to be careful. Don't just jump on the bandwagon. Do your research. Make sure you understand the fundamentals before investing in anything.
So don't put all your eggs in one basket, and don't invest more than you can afford to lose. That's good advice in general, right?
Absolutely, especially with crypto.
Okay, what about the impact on the regular financial system? So people say crypto could destabilize banks.
That's another valid concern. If crypto really takes off, people might not need banks as much.
So Banks would need to adapt.
They would have to innovate or, risk getting left behind.
Adapt or die, right?
Yeah.
Makes you wonder how they're going to respond to all this. Any other downsides we should be aware of?
Well, we haven't talked about cybersecurity. That's a big one in the crypto world. Exchanges and wallets, they're prime targets for hackers.
Yeah, that's scary. The more valuable crypto becomes, the more attractive it is to criminals.
Unfortunately, that's true. So it's really important to choose exchanges and wallets that have good security, and be careful yourself. Protect your own assets.
Double check those passwords. Watch out for phishing scams. Okay, we've covered a lot in this deep dive. The changes under Trump, the good and the bad, the risks and opportunities. What's the main takeaway for our listeners?
I think the biggest takeaway is this. The crypto world is changing fast. To make smart decisions, you have to stay informed. Be cautious. Do your own research. Don't just follow the hype blindly.
It's like, yeah, the more popular crypto gets, the bigger the target on its back.
Exactly. So yeah, choose your exchange carefully. Make sure they take security seriously. And two-factor authentication. That's a must. Like an extra lock on your crypto vault.
I like that. The crypto vault. Okay, so we've got deregulation, market bubbles, the impact on banks, and cybersecurity. Anything else we should be thinking about?
We've mostly talked about the money side of things, but crypto, it has a bigger impact too, on society, I mean.
Oh, interesting. Like what?
Well, some people are worried that crypto could make inequality worse.
I see.
If not everyone has access to crypto or the knowledge to use it, it could widen the gap between, the haves and the have-nots.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It's like any new technology, right? It can be good, or it can make things worse.
Exactly. And then there's the environmental impact. Some cryptocurrencies, they use a lot of energy.
Oh, yeah, like Bitcoin. I've been hearing about that.
Right. So it's important to be aware of that. The environmental cost, I mean. Some of the newer cryptocurrencies, they're designed to be more efficient. So that's something to keep in mind.
So it's not just about the money. We need to think about the bigger picture.
Yeah, definitely. The social impact, the environmental impact.
Okay, I think we've covered a lot today. This crazy week in the crypto world, the opportunities, the risks, the big picture stuff. It's been a lot.
It has. But the main thing for investors to remember, knowledge is power. Stay informed, be careful, do your research, and don't just buy into the hype.
Great advice. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. And to all our listeners out there, thanks for being here. We'll be back next week with another deep dive. See you then.